WNST task started when I bit a hole in my tongue. So if I sound a little strange, that's what it is. Secondly, the Yankees beat the snot out of the Orioles, and then the Pittsburgh Penguins skated the Stanley Cup around on Sunday night. I'm wondering what's going to happen on Monday morning. Alan McCallum joins us now to discuss the Orioles, and as I said out on Facebook and Twitter, Alan, I expect you to gently dissect all that ails the Baltimore Orioles right now.
I don't know that you can gently dissect anything and be accurate. I mean, they're as bad as we've seen them in a really long time right now. Look, I mean, you can start with the things that were unexpected and the things that happened during the season, and certainly the loss of Zach Britton has upset the balance in the bullpen. And Darren O'Day, I mean, he just went on the DL recently, but over the last two seasons, they have had to nurse him in a very different way. He lost a lot of the year last year. And even when he's been in the bullpen this year, you know, he goes for one day and you don't see him again for another two. And one of the things that was the greatness of Darren O'Day was that, you know, historically side armors, or at least certainly the myth is that side armors have the ability to stay more healthy because they're not throwing from over the top.
It's a torque on the arm, right? Literally.
Right. It's much just less pressure on what they're trying to do. And as O'Day's age, and as he's just gotten this big contract a couple of years ago, it's going the other way. So it's easy to think about, right? I mean, the Orioles for years have had this problem with innings out of their starting rotation, and it certainly is as prevalent now as it's ever been. But what they had was that if you had Britton and O'Day sort of 8 and 9, then certainly when they were in good shape last year, then Givens and Brock was going 2 innings, maybe 6 and 7, and then Givens last year when he was going well could take that up on the next day. So nobody was being overtaxed. Well, no O'Day, no Britton. Now Brock has to pitch the 9th inning, and you're looking at Givens, who is good, but he's not lights out. Donnie Hart, who for 6 weeks last season got sold as the second coming as a lefty in the bullpen, can't get anybody out, and he's being on the shuttle now down to AAA. And pretty much everybody else in the bullpen, the exception of Alec Asher when he was in there, has been, you know, they've had a couple good sets there, but nobody's been able to stick. And that leads you right into the rotation. I think everybody knows the story on this, that Dan Duquette put the team into the season with the idea that if all goes well, we'll be okay. Well, the first thing is that the ace, Chris Tillman, looked fabulous for the first 4 months last season, and then with a new pitch, and you would have to believe that pitch might have done something to shoulder. I'm not an expert. I haven't examined him. I don't know. But he hasn't been. He went on the DL last season and hasn't been right since. And to know that
that much is obvious. That's inarguable, right? So right, okay.
To finish the season knowing that he had this struggle, and then what they didn't tell people at the time, but knowing in December that he was having arm issues. And this is not new. I mean, we've talked about this a couple different times now as the season's gone on. To know that your ace, the one guy that pretty much anchors a patchwork rotation for the last 5 years, you can't count on, and to do nothing to go out and find someone who can at least take some of the burden off 2 young guys who you can't know what's going to come from them in Gausman and Bundy. And fortunately, Bundy has been everything you could have asked for out of him right now. But Gausman is not even remotely close to that. And then guys like Ubaldo and Miley, who are essentially the same guy, who, one from the right side, one from the left side, who can't figure out half the time where the ball's going, which constantly puts them in bad counts. And even if they make their way through it, is going to run their pitch count up so that they're out of the game by the 5th or 6th inning. That to not have the ace, to at least have sort of 1 or 2, maybe 2.5 spots in the rotation nailed down, puts you exactly where the Orioles are. And then you follow it up with the Orioles offense. And it's really simple. The difference between this year and last year are two things. That Mark Trumbo is having a career year, an MVP type year, where he had 47 home runs, and he was crushing the ball through certainly the first let's say 3.5 months, and really carried the team. And Manny Machado still looked like an all-star. And in this season, and then here's an important thing. They struggled at times offensively as well. And when Hyun-Soo Kim finally got into the lineup, he helped lend some consistency to an offense that's built on 3 to 4 solo home runs a game. And if you're lucky, you'll get you'll hit one, 2 or 3 run homer along the way. Well, Mark Trumbo is on pace to hit 24 home runs right now. And he's okay, I guess. Got off to a slow start. He's been okay, but he's not having the career year. And Manny Machado is not playing right now, but he looks like Chris Davis, quite frankly. Hitting
That's not a compliment, by the way. Yes.
It is not. No, it's not. Hitting 210. And I mean, as badly as we've talked about Adam Jones at times, the same swinging at that same outside slider. At least it's just that sort of one pitch. Manny, through much of the season, I mean, it looked like he could have thrown the ball 15 feet off the plate, and he was swinging at it. I mean, that's as bad as he's looked at times this year. And as I've said to you before, I mean, I attribute it to him being around through the first 5 years of his career, guys that have very little plate discipline. So, I mean, you look at what's going on.
Well, as a franchise, that's afflicted them. Yes, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you add to that J.J. Hardy has not aged well, that Hyun-Soo Kim can't get in the lineup, that we talked about this, that the way Duquette constructed this offense made little sense to me unless he was counting on offensive guys to get hurt and then he had backups. But one thing, and I said this to you before the season started, the best cleanup hitter the Orioles have is playing at AAA right now. His name is Pedro Alvarez. And when Mark Trumbo struggled through a lot of the second half of the season, he had great numbers and also couldn't get in the lineup. But if you look at his numbers in the second half of last year, he really helped spark that team when he was in the lineup. So they've got Mancini, who Buck knows he has to play because he's a young guy who's got a lot of talent, but he's got no place to play. So he's taking the spot of the one guy who's going to give you a concerted quality at bat most of the time, in Hyun-Soo Kim. And I have to say this, I don't understand how Seth Smith has become an immovable force against right-handed pitchers in this lineup. He's a platoon guy, and he's been okay. He got off to a really good start. But
of all the trades that have been made, I mean, he's a Major League Baseball player. I mean,
he is a Major League Baseball player. I'm not saying that, but when he goes into a slump, put Mancini in right and put Hyun-Soo Kim in left and see what happens, and somehow he can't get removed from the lineup if there's a right-handed pitcher, and I don't really understand that. Scope, of all the guys, Scope and Mancini are having the best years, and let's be blunt. When as talented as Mancini is, and it looks like he has a chance to be something of quality, when the guy that you count on in the lineup to give the best at bat in a game is the guy that's been in the league for 2.5 months, that's a problem. So many of the things, maybe not all of them, but many of the things that Duquette constructed this lineup on, expecting that they were all going to go well, and not really knowing, particularly from the pitching standpoint, what you're going to do if it didn't.
There was no backup plan. That much, we're now to the backup plan, and it's very, very clear how thin that plan was. That, and I'll get to this in a minute about strategy, but pitching alone, failing marks across the board, and it's been failing for several years, and that's really the downfall of them has been letting Gonzalez go, not really valuing Wei-Yin Chen, overvaluing Gallardo, giving all the money to Jimenez. I mean, there have been a lot of mistakes here. There's no doubt about that.
Look, Miguel Gonzalez to me is a key picture, and I've had conversations with people where they trace the releasing of Miguel Gonzalez right to Matt Wieters taking the money and not going out on the market last year. And maybe that's true, but in a game where starting pitching is everything, or certainly a larger component than anything else, and you've got a guy, granted, had been injured, but you're trying to create depth. You're looking for depth. So much of that is key, and you get whiffed on that. But look, I mean, again, this is a club that he's counting on the Logan Verretts and all these guys who keep coming up from AAA, who are basically 4A pitchers, because the idea is that you've got fresh arms in the pen. It's great if a guy's fresh, but if he can't get anybody out, it doesn't matter. Edwin Jackson has been awful for 4 years. I mean, he's gotten bounced around because he can't pitch anymore. And they brought him up to see what he could do, and they found out what everybody already knew, that he can't pitch anymore. In April, before it got hot and humid and the ball started flying, it worked great. And now, as the weather has gotten warm and the ball starts to fly, everybody else is making the ball fly out of the ballpark, and the Orioles aren't consistent enough offensively to do the same thing. Look, I've seen the Orioles get battered around in Yankee Stadium and Fenway Park before. That is not what frustrates me. What frustrates me is the quality of at-bats that you watch happen from Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge, and for that matter, Trey Mancini, guys that are young and clearly have been, who have a chance to be big sluggers, but carry an offensive approach to the plate that makes some semblance of sense, that looks like discipline at the plate. And the Red Sox are just full of guys like that. I mean, that's what they do. They're actually probably missing a big bat like Big Papi.
Well, this time last year, all their guys were hitting 300. This time around, we went up to Yankee Stadium. I'm like, Gregorius is doing what? Look at these guys. I mean, Starlin Castro, what? Aaron Hicks, what? Yeah, right. I mean, Matt Holliday batting 300 again. I mean, it's, there's no break in that lineup, and there's no break, and they're all in it. That really feels like a good team there, Alan.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's about quality of at-bats, being willing to pass the baton, and knowing that there's an opposite field besides the one that's your pull field. And I've heard a couple people say, they need to fire the hitting coach. But hitting coaches have nothing. Chris Davis has been like that since the minor leagues, where he's putting up Ruthian home runs.
Well, it's why he got dealt here, let's be honest.
Right.
I mean, the Rangers didn't believe in him. The Rangers thought he was Dave Kingman all along. Or Chris Carter, for that matter, right? We've seen him come through now, right? Chris Carter's on his second team, and he can't hit 200, and he strikes out every third time he bats,
And Mark Trumbo is a guy who's got passed around because he's adequate defensively and has big power, but isn't a quality hitter. I mean, it's the story. You can tell the story for a lot of the guys in the lineup. The best hitter that Duquette's brought in during this time was Nelson Cruz, and he let him go after a year for a contract that, as it turns out, a couple of years later, doesn't look like it's that big. So, I mean, you're talking about the sins of the past. You're talking about players who, after 5 years, are starting to look a little old, and as the game continues to develop and change, you have a lot of hitters who aren't changing with it. Maybe they can, I don't know, but we've known for a while that the Orioles' MO as an offense needed to alter itself, and Duquette keeps going out to get the same type of players, while the players that he has are starting to get older, and we're seeing a lot of that proof right now.
He is Alan McCallum. He's our longtime baseball friend, historian, analyst, former insider, now an outsider, just watching like all the rest of us. Disturbing side on the pitching is now, like, what are they going to do? And I guess the big picture, and Luke and I have discussed this, and I'm re-releasing the Peter Principles here this summer, week by week. There'll be a couple chapters, and going back through the history of this organization and the real problems. I mean, when the team's hovering around 500, and the question is whether to trade off future Hall of Famers or not, or what we perceive to be, that's a different problem than what we had 10 years ago, Alan. You know that. We've been friends too long. But that being said, where they are right now is still with the same owner. They're going to have a lame duck general manager, a lame duck manager, Adam Jones, Britton, Machado, all coming back next year. And in a regular, normal franchise, not this chaos, in a normal franchise, they would look at this like the Yankees did last year and say, all right, let's trade off some assets here. Well, what will Machado really bring back, and what's the real value of keeping him for another 800 at-bats or 900 at-bats over the next year and a half if we're not going to win? And I think the overwhelming question right now, Alan, is can they win the World Series this year? And if they can't win it this year, can they win it next year?
Well, but they weren't going to win the World Series last year or this year because they're not a team. They're a team built to sort of mix and match during the regular season and compete. And they've done that. And it's getting harder now. And again, I mean, some of this is about injury. I think that can't be overstated, that Britton, O'Day and Tillman are affecting the standard balance of this club. I mean, so that needs to be taken into account. But the reality was, if people can talk about Zach Britton not coming into that playoff game last year all they want, the reality is they saved some life off of the arms of those pitchers because they were going to go, if they'd won that game and gone deep into the postseason, or at least one more round, they weren't going to win because they're not built to win in the postseason. They're just not.
Well, that being said, now what happens over the next 6 weeks here if they are going to retool this organization with some sort of vision, which they've never had, quite frankly? I mean, one of the themes of the Peter Principles in the first 20 years of the organization is there was never really a plan, really a plan. And I don't know that we sit here in 2017 and say, is there really a plan for Buck? Is there really a plan for Dan Duquette? Duquette's out talking about drafting players. The notion is he's not going to be here 17 months from now, right? Like that's the probability of all of this. And the same thing with Machado. And I don't know what it would bring back, and him hitting 220 and all these other, and who the suitor would be. And I'm making that part of it up. But I do know that over at the warehouse, they're not considering any of that right now.
Well, let's just get it right on the table that the biggest problem that they may have in terms of answering that question is that the two biggest trade pieces are both hurt. One is hurt and not performing well, and the other's just hurt and we don't know how hurt he is. And Zach Britton and Manny Machado. I mean, Manny Machado is hitting 210 right now, and obviously his glove is still elite and premier, but I don't know what they get for him right now based on the kind of season he's having. I mean, you hope to trade him when he's hitting 260, 270 at the minimum with the number of home runs he has.
Well, you'd like to think that he will be doing that by the time you get there. And then the question is, can you win the World Series this year or next year? If you can, then you better be thinking about trying to win it in 18 or 19 or 20. And I don't know that anybody around there really has that sort of capacity or that they're vested in that, quite frankly.
So, I mean, and then Zach Britton's the other guy, and I think you could get a haul for him. But that's
the healthy version of him.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, if let's say Manny comes back and gets healthy, I would trade him. Is there a plan? I think Duquette's plan all along was constantly finding guys with options so that you could make a 25-man roster into, let's say, a 35-man roster. And I remember in 2012, I'd never seen a general manager manipulate a 40-man roster the way he did. And I think that worked for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, you think about some of the guys that he brought up, they were major league pitchers that still had some options. And at this point, that's not what's happening right now. So, I mean, that's part of the problem. And the other part is that some other organizations are starting to do similar things. So as that happens, some of the talent base that you're getting is sort of sifted out amongst the rest of the league. It's an admirable thing. It was an admirable idea, and I would go a little shy of calling it revolutionary. But you have, at the end of the day, talent wins. And to get talent, you have to spend some money, and they have invested in players that have done well here. They signed Adam Jones, they signed Chris Davis, but as I said to you, if it's a heart thing, the last two big free agents they signed were Chris Davis and Mark Trumbo, and both of them went out on the free agent market, and nobody offered them a contract. That's important. That's important to consider. Both of those guys, after having, hitting a lot of home runs and driving runs, went out on the market, and nobody else offered them a contract. And that speaks to the evaluation of players. It's not that they're
around baseball. I mean, that's the market viewing guys that are going to strike out 200 times. I mean, we're all comfortable with this strikeout thing now, but are we really? I mean, is that the guy you really want on your team? And if Chris Davis right now hit the market, what value would he have? He'd get a 2-year, $10 million deal or something, right?
It's okay to have a guy on your team who strikes out 200 times and hits you 40 home runs. It's not okay to have 4 or 5. And the Orioles have Adam Jones and Mark Trumbo and Chris Davis. Manny Machado is becoming that player. And while that's happening, you Jonathan Scope. Very few of these guys walk. And J.J. Hardy is no longer. They were discussing on the air today. J.J. Hardy, how long it's been since he hit a home run. I couldn't care less if he hits another home run. I want him to hit 260. If he hit 260 with 5 home runs and 30 doubles, he would be a productive hitter at the bottom of the lineup. These are the things to consider. So, they need to change the course of this team. And you're right. I guess they could deal Mark Trumbo at this point because his contract is friendly enough, and he's going to hit home runs. He's having the kind of year that you could probably move him. But they're stuck with Chris Davis, and they're stuck with Adam Jones. And I don't know what they could get for Manny, but I'm not telling you they have to blow it up, because here's the other side of it. Scope, Machado, Mancini, if Chance Sisco proves to be anywhere close to what they're projecting him to be, that's suddenly 4 young guys that you can build a lineup around. And, Adam Jones eventually...
If you throw Machado in there, you better throw $300 million at him too, right?
Right, absolutely. But I'm just saying, it's as much as we've talked about what they didn't do, there's something to be said for, Jonathan Scope's legit. Manny Machado, he needs to figure some things out, but obviously he has world-class talent. Trey Mancini's 3 months into the season, so I'm not declaring him a Hall of Famer. That's not what I'm talking about. But he's got a disciplined approach, and clearly the kind of power.
He looks like he's going to be in the Orioles lineup the next 4 years doing something. They're going to find somewhere for him to play.
And they need, and again, Chance Sisco would have to come up and be successful. But what you're talking about then is a core 4 players who can really help round out things. And then, again, Adam Jones and Chris Davis are going to be there. But there are 3 other spots in that lineup that you could do something to get some speed, some plate discipline, a different kind of approach. And maybe, if Mancini assumes a role deeper in the lineup, or closer to the middle of the lineup, if Manny Machado finds his form again, then the picture is different. So I'm not telling you that the cupboard is completely bare and they have to completely blow this thing up. But if you're not going to be willing to go spend some money to get pitching, I think it's pretty clear they're not going to sign Tillman. I think he's gone. So then you need Gausman to show something. And I think Gausman, first off, I think if you look at his numbers, he's more of a second-half pitcher. I think that the numbers
I don't know what their biggest concern is right now, whether it's Machado or whether it's Gausman or whether it's Britton or whether it's, there's a lot that's gone wrong here and a lot that's going to need to go right. And my point is, all right, 6 weeks from now, what are you going to do? You're going to stand pat? You're going to, try to go all in to be a number 2 wild card again? What are you doing here? The clock's ticking on Machado. The clock's ticking on Britton. The clock's ticking on Jones. The clock's ticking on Duquette and Buck Showalter. What are you going to do?
So here's what I would do. I don't believe they're gonna deal Machado.
Nor do I. I don't think they're even thinking about it.
So I think that they could trade Brad Brock. I think that I would try to see if there would be any takers for Mark Trumbo. I would try. You have to stick with Gausman. I mean, you can't give up on him at this point.
Well, you wouldn't get anything for him, right? I mean,
no, I think. See, this is a Jake Arrieta situation. I think you would. I think there'd be teams out there that would trade for him. They're not going to give you their best prospects necessarily, but there would be a market for Kevin Gausman. The guy throws 98. The problem is that he should probably be throwing 94 and get more movement on his fastball, as opposed to trying to pump up all the time and having the
problem is he has no idea where the ball is going.
But you could get something for him if they're savvy.
I wouldn't deal him. That's me. I mean, I would.
Neither would I. That's what.
The only reason I would deal Machado isn't because he's having a bad year. It's because he's going to leave in a year and a half. That's the reason I would deal Machado.
If it were me, I would deal Machado, but I don't believe that they're going to deal Machado. So I'm trying to be realistic about what they can do. They can trade Brock. They can trade Mark Trumbo. And again, look, this is a horrible patch in the season. It's a long season. Can they recover and be respectable? Sure. But you're asking good questions about players who the question is going forward, twofold. Going forward, are they going to improve dramatically enough that you can win the World Series? And I think the answer to that is no. And then the second question is, if you believe that you have to change the dynamic of this offense, and I can't believe anybody watching it wouldn't agree with that, then you have to make room for the other players that you have to go find. So those are elements that need to be considered. So trying to do that would be difficult. And I'll be honest, I mean, the thing I would be worried about trading for these guys is that I don't trust Dan Duquette to go out and find them. I'm looking forward to a new vision in the front office. I don't trust Dan Duquette in that sense.
I don't trust Peter Angelos in that sense, but that's
right.
That's where the question is, if Buck signs a 3-year extension and signs on to be the general manager, what exactly are we signing up for here? And Rosenthal reported the dissension this weekend that isn't a shock to anyone, that when the thing starts to go a little bit adrift, trouble starts, and they're in a troubled area right now, and it feels to me like they can't pitch their way out of this. They might be able to hit their way out of it before it's all over with, but they can't pitch their way out of this.
The only way, they need one or two guys to get truly hot. They need Manny to show up again, and this would not be the first time that we've seen Chris Davis sometime in mid-June into early July just start hitting the cover off the ball for 2 months at a time. I mean, those things are not beyond the realm of possibility. But it needs to happen at this point. It needs to happen soon, because they're after getting off to a really good start and building up some equity, they have relinquished all but a little of it, and they need to find a way to get back into this thing. But you're right. I mean, 6 weeks from now, the trade deadline looms, and they need to make some decisions today, starting today, about what their future is going to look like, because there are quietly a lot of important contracts that are going to be coming up soon, which means that Dan Duquette's going to be at least a beginning architect of that, and that means there are going to be some hard decisions made. But there are some pieces that they could move and maybe not get 4 for 1 for them, but might be able to get some pieces that can help them. So I would start targeting the teams that might be a good fit for them right now.
Alan, we'll check in again around the All-Star break with you. Luke and I are actually going to go to the All-Star game this year down in Miami, so lots of young talent there and lots of other things going on in baseball. But you must admit, pretty hideous weekend, right? I mean, kind of like an all-timer.
Well, I mean, if you subtract the games that they came back in against the Pirates, which were nothing short of spectacular, and look at the run they've been on over the last month, maybe 5 weeks, and watching them play baseball has been really hideous. And it looks like a train out of control right now. And I've got to be honest, Buck is usually as stoic on the bench as you can get, but watching him on the bench the last couple of weeks, and after the game, I mean, I've never seen him look like that before. And that tells me that he is aware that they're in trouble. I mean, can they write it? Yes. There's still time in the season, and they have enough talent to write a regular season. But I don't think that this is a mirage. They're in trouble, and some of it's injury, some of it is a lack of quality planning for a 40-man roster. But they need to figure some things out right now, or make some moves to try and get pieces for the future.
All right, man, hang in there. Keep the faith. We'll continue to watch. This week it's the White Sox and the Cardinals this weekend. He is Alan at WNST.net, and, of course, our longtime friend and historian, Alan McCallum, joining us here from time to time to talk a little Orioles baseball with us. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. You can also email me, nasty at WNST.net. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.